Hi, this is Kathy Tucker with Kathy Tucker Coaching and Consulting. And as you know, I am founder of the sales leadership program, 9 Steps to Leading a Rockstar Sales Team. And today I'm going to introduce Module 6 of my 9-step program to you. And in doing so, I am going to give you a quick summary of modules 1 through 5, because when you think about module 6, which is how to manage performance effectively and compassionately, you realize how you really need to be doing all of steps 1 through 5 in order to be able to manage performance effectively and compassionately. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to do a quick little summary, and we're going to do it this way. Let's see, take a look at this. All right. So here's what I have. I've got kind of an overview of all 6 chapters, and we're going to start with the first chapter we had was on, really establishing your leadership, how to establish your leadership and establish your brand. And what we talked about was to start off by connecting with your salespeople, understanding their strengths by having strengths interviews with them, and learning their why, what motivates them. As a leader, the more you understand what makes your people tick and what their strengths are, the easier it is for you to help lead them to the results that you're looking for. So once we really understand, our salespeople and ourselves too, actually, then we talked about driving sales. And of course, as a sales leader, it's all about driving sales, right? Because we need to have results. So we talked about what are 5 key steps to driving sales. We have to set clear expectations. We have to provide them with the tools and the training to make sure they're able to do their job and they have the tools and the resources to do the job. This is where not only do we talk about their training, but we also talked about, do they have a unique selling proposition? Are they able to clearly communicate their compelling competitive advantage and their sales story? These are part of the tools that we need to make sure they have. Then we talked about motivating them. And of course, there's lots of different ways to motivate them. And also depending on the person, they're motivated differently. And then we talked about holding them accountable and the many different ways to hold them accountable. And then, of course, celebrating their success. So those were our 5 steps of driving sales. And there's lots of details involved in each one of those. Then we said, okay, one of the game changers in really leading a rockstar sales team is right here. It's holding one-on-ones. And what I talk about is the 3 different types of one-on-ones that I always like to hold. The first one is about the results. You can't have a sales team, you can't be a sales leader if you're not constantly focused on results. So we talked about having one-on-ones that's focused just on results. And, are they below standards, above standards, or meet standards? And then the second one-on-one we talk about is strategizing. How do we help them strategize to advance their leads and to maximize their opportunity? So that's another one-on-one. And then the third one-on-one we talk about is how to hold a one-on-one that's focused on growth and development. How do we, as coaches, help identify their strengths and build on their strengths and help them grow and develop into rock stars? So the one-on-ones are really game changers. And as you see here, what I note is when you're working with the results one-on-one, you determine, what the results are, and then you're going to manage that performance accordingly. When we were talking about strategizing and growth and development, then we're going to be coaching them accordingly. So that leads us to the next couple of chapters, which chapter 4 was all about coaching and how to really help them enhance their skills. And there's ways as a coach that we can communicate with our team and inspire them and motivate them. Or if we're not doing it right, we might demotivate them. And so we really have to learn what are some of the key skills of coaching. So we reviewed coaching, and then we also went up to situational leadership, which is another element of coaching. How are we leading and how are we communicating with our team? And in this particular module, we talked about how, your leadership style needs to adapt to your salesperson. And how do you figure that out? Is you determine that salesperson's level of competence and level of commitment. And depending on their level of competence and commitment, based on the specific task or goal they're working towards, that's what helps us determine as a leader what kind of style to work with. And by competence, we're looking at, what is their aptitude for this particular role and what is their ability in this particular role. And then we're also looking at their level of commitment. How willing are they to do this job and to do the activities that are required to be successful? How motivated are they inherently to do the job? The more motivated they are, of course, the more they're going to produce for you. And then certainly their confidence has an impact on their level of commitment. So we talked about situational leadership and said, okay, if we can identify their level of competence and commitment, then we could determine the best leadership style to help coach them into what we call our, high results, which then gives us this, the self-reliant high achievers. Or really, once you have self-reliant high achievers, you end up with results, manyfold. So this is ultimately what our goal is, and what we talked about is the better we can lead them, the more we can show them how to become self-reliant high achievers. Then the next topic that we're covering in this particular chapter is going to be managing performance. And when I talk about managing performance, we're talking about how to do it both effectively and compassionately. Ultimately, we care about our salespeople and we have respect for them and their talents. But we need to, I shouldn't say but, ultimately, it's necessary for us to see them achieve the results. So we're going to set our standards like we talked about in the beginning. Once we, set the appropriate expectations, then we're going to have to hold them accountable for the results. So then we determine, are they meet standards and above standards, or are they unfortunately below the standards that you've set? If they're meets and above standards, then we're going to manage their performance and coach them so they become self-reliant high achievers and what I call rock stars. So we could take those meets and above standards folks and really help develop their skills and develop their confidence and develop their motivation and take ownership of their role and truly become rock stars. If on the other hand, they are below standards, then it's our job to manage that performance. And that's when, again, we're going to be looking at their competence and their commitment, and when we look at that, we look at their aptitude and their willingness to do the job. And we say, okay, is it the right fit? If it's not the right fit, well then, you know what? We may need to terminate them. The other elements we're looking at, again, is their ability. If it's their ability, then perhaps it's a training issue. If it's a training issue, we can coach them up and we can turn it around. If it's a motivation issue, then perhaps it's a behavior issue. And there, perhaps we can turn that around by energizing their why, or perhaps we can't. It just depends on the individual. So, in that case, we may, again, coach them up or manage them out. So, managing performance is also about coaching. It's about identifying what's causing great performance and then enhancing it so that we can help them become self-reliant achievers and rock stars. Or if they're below standards, it's about figuring out whether it's a training issue or a behavior issue or a fit issue. And depending on what it is, we're either going to turn them around or we're going to terminate. And in turning them around, we're going to coach them up to turn them around. And if we're terminating, well, then we're going to be managing them out and terminating them. So nobody likes to do that, but ultimately we're going to talk about why that can be the best thing for everybody and why it needs to be done in a respectful, compassionate way. So this is just the first 6 modules of 9 Steps to Leading a Rockstar Sales Team. And in it, we get into a lot more of the details on how to do each one of these steps. Leadership, driving sales, holding one-on-ones, coaching them, situational leadership, and now as we're talking about managing performance. But like I said, you can't manage performance if we haven't started and done everything else. All right, more to come. Stay tuned. Kathy Tucker, Coaching and Consulting.